There's a silence in the monastery, a silence that should never have existed. For 80 years, this silence has guarded something that Saint Maximilian Kolbe knew, something he chose to hide from the world, and until now, do you feel it? When a truth has been buried so long that it begins to scream from beneath the earth. That's what's happening right now. The walls are crumbling, the doors are opening, and what was whispering in the shadows now wants to be shouted from the rooftops. I need to tell you something about Kolbe, something that will change everything you thought you knew about this saint. But first, you need to understand why this was hidden for so long. Imagine a man, Auschwitz, 1941. He offers himself to die in place of a stranger. You know this story. The whole world knows this story. But no one told you what he did in his final moments. No one told you about the secret technique he developed, a technique that transformed his martyrdom into something beyond anyone's wildest imagination. The documents were there all along, hidden in the monastery archives in Niepokalanów, letters that were never published, personal journals locked away, testimonies from nuns who witnessed inexplicable miracles, everything sealed, everything silenced. But in 2024, something changed. A Polish historian, working in the secret archives of the Vatican, found a letter that Saint Kolbe wrote 3 days before his death, a letter addressed to you, to this moment, to now. Have you ever felt an invisible force working in your life, a presence that whispers truths you're not yet ready to hear? Kolbe discovered how to access this force, how to converse with it, how to become a perfect channel for its manifestation, and he hid it from the world because he knew it wasn't the time. Until now, the letter begins. For those who will come after the great forgetting, he knew. He always knew that a time would come when humanity would forget how to access the sacred, how to touch the untouchable, how to whisper with the infinite. That time is now. Do you feel the weight of this moment? Do you understand that it's no coincidence you are here while hearing these words at this precise moment in history? The walls that protected this secret are crumbling, and you are on the right side of the revelation. Kolbe developed what he called the technique of the infinite. Mirror, a spiritual practice so powerful that he only taught it to 3 people in his entire life. 3 people who swore eternal secrecy. 3 people who took this knowledge to their graves. But one of them left clues. Sister Veronica Marie, a Polish nun who worked with Kolbe in the final years of his life, hid detailed instructions for this technique in a place no one would ever think to look. Inside a rosary, an ordinary rosary that passed from hand to hand for decades without anyone knowing, the spiritual treasure it carried within, until someone broke a bead by accident and found a piece of paper, a paper with a single sentence. The mirror only reflects when you stop looking at it. That sentence opened the door to everything. Do you want to know what Kolbe discovered about the nature of prayer, about how to converse directly with the Blessed Virgin Mary, about how to transform suffering into pure spiritual power, about how to become a perfect conductor of divine will? He discovered that there is a state of consciousness where you don't pray to God, you become God's own prayer. Stop for a moment. Feel this. You become God's own prayer. It's not you asking, it's God. It's asking through you. It's not you seeking, it's God seeking through your eyes. It's not you loving, it's infinite love using your heart as an instrument. Kolbe reached this state, and he taught others to reach it too. The technique has 3 levels, 3 portals that open in sequence, each deeper than the last, each more transformative than the last, each more dangerous than the last. Dangerous? Yes, because when you learn to become a pure channel for the divine, you never go back to ordinary life. You can no longer live on the surface. You can no longer pretend you don't know what you know. That's why it was hidden. That's why it was protected. That's why it was silenced for 80 years. But now, the signs are everywhere. The world is thirsty for authentic spirituality. People are desperate for a real path to the sacred, and what Kolbe discovered may be exactly what humanity needs at this moment in history. Are you ready to know? The first level of the technique is called the silence that speaks. Kolbe discovered that there is a kind of silence that is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of everything. A silence so profound that within it you can hear the whispers of heaven. But it's not a silence you create. It's a silence you find, as if it were always there and waiting for you to stop making noise, so it can manifest. Sister Veronica wrote, Father Kolbe entered this silence as one enters an invisible cathedral, and when he emerged, his eyes shone with a light that was not of this world. How did he do it? First, he looked at a crucifix, but he didn't look at the image unless he looked through the image, as if the crucifix were a window, and he was trying to see what was on the other side. Then he began to repeat a prayer, but not with his mouth, with his heart. A prayer so silent is that even he couldn't hear it. A prayer that happened in a place deeper than thought. And then he stopped praying completely and began to listen. Have you ever tried to listen to silence? Not the silence from outside, the silence from within. That empty space that exists between one thought and another, between one breath and another, between one heartbeat and another. Kolbe discovered that in that empty space, there is no emptiness. There is everything. There is a presence so intense that when you touch it for the first time, you understand why mystics of all ages spoke in riddles, because there are no words to describe the indescribable, but there is a feeling, the feeling that you are no longer alone, that you have never been alone, that there is an infinite companionship encompassing every moment of your existence, a companionship that doesn't invade, but embraces, that doesn't judge, but welcomes, that doesn't demand, but offers. Kolbe called this presence the Silent Mother, and said that she was always there, whispering guidance, offering comfort, pouring out grace, but that she could only be perceived in the absolute silence of the heart. He taught that when you find this silence, something changes forever in your life. You begin receiving answers to questions you didn't even know you were asking. Coincidences start happening, clearly signs. The right people appear at the right moments, with the right words, offering exactly what you need. It's as if an invisible hand begins to reorganize your reality. Sister Veronica Marie witnessed this countless times. She wrote, When Father Kolbe practiced the silence that speaks, it was as if heaven itself descended to converse with him. And after these conversations, he always knew exactly what to do, exactly what to say, exactly where to go. But here's the secret he guarded until the end. The silence that speaks is only the first level. It's merely the gateway. It's just the beginning of a spiritual journey that goes far beyond anything any prayer book has ever taught. The second level changes everything. Do you feel that anticipation growing within you? That holy curiosity making your heart beat faster? That thirst to know what has been hidden for so long? This is no coincidence. This is a calling. This is the technique itself beginning to work on you, even before you fully understand it. Because the truth is, you didn't find this knowledge by chance. This knowledge found you, and now that the doors have begun to open, there's no closing them again. What has been whispering for 80 years now wants to be shouted, and you are here to hear that shout. Are you ready for the second level? To discover what Kolbe did when silence was no longer enough? When he needed something even deeper, even more transformative, even closer to the heart of God? The second level is called the prayer that doesn't pray. And when you understand what that means, you will understand why Saint Maximilian Kolbe was able to transform the final moments of his life into a miracle that echoes to this day. But before we continue, you need to make a choice, because from this point on there's no turning back. What you will discover will forever change how you relate to the sacred. It will open doors in your soul that, once opened, never close again. It will awaken within you a thirst for God that can no longer be quenched with common prayers, with Sunday Mass, with superficial religiosity. Do you want this? Do you want this transformation? Are you willing to pay the price of authentic spirituality? Because there is a price, and Kolbe paid that price with his own life. He knew that when you learn to communicate directly with the divine, you become dangerous to the forces that want to keep humanity in darkness. You become a threat to everything that is false, superficial, manipulative. You become a beacon of truth in a world that prefers comfortable lies, and beacons attract storms, but they also attract lost ships that need to find their way home. Kolbe chose to be a beacon, and he paid the price, but he left a map for other beacons. A map hidden for 80 years, a map that is now being revealed exactly when the world needs it most. Will you be the next beacon? Will you learn the secret technique that transformed a simple Franciscan friar into the most powerful saint of the 20th century? Will you discover how to access the same state of consciousness that allowed Kolbe to face death with a peace that transcends all understanding? Then take a deep breath, prepare your heart, and let the second level of revelation begin to manifest itself through these words, because what you are about to discover will do more than change your life. It will make you remember who you really are. The second level of Kolbe's secret technique reached us through a miracle that happened in 1982, 41 years after his death. A woman was dying, terminal cancer. Doctors said she had hours to live. Her name was Helena Kowalski, and she was the daughter of one of the prisoners Kolbe saved at Auschwitz, the man who should have died in the saint's place. Helena was alone in the hospital, no family, no hope, nothing but the memory of the saint who saved her father, and in what she believed to be her last moments of consciousness, she began to whisper a desperate prayer. Saint Maximilian Kolbe, if there truly is life after death, if you can hear me from where you are, teach me how to die in peace. Teach me how you faced death with such serenity. And then something happened that changed everything. Kolbe's voice began to speak inside her mind, not an imaginary voice, not a hallucination caused by morphine, a real voice, clear, unmistakable, and that voice began to teach her the second level of the secret technique, the prayer that doesn't pray. Helena survived. Not only survived, she was completely healed. And she spent the next 20 years of her life documenting everything Kolbe taught her that night in the hospital. All the secret knowledge he had guarded during his life, all the mystical wisdom he had developed in silence. Doctors called her cure inexplicable. The church called it a miracle. But Helena knew the truth. She knew she had learned something that transcended both medicine and conventional miracles. She had learned to access the same state of consciousness that allowed Kolbe to transform his death into an absolute spiritual victory. And in 2003, a few days before she died at 83 years old, Helena gave all her writings to a young priest named Father Miguel Santos, a Brazilian who was studying in Rome, a man she had seen in a dream 3 years before meeting him in person. "You will know when the time comes to reveal this to the world," she told him. "You will feel it in your heart. You will know that the silence has ended." Father Miguel kept these writings for 20 years, until 2023. Until he finally felt the time had come, the time to break the silence of 80 years, the time to reveal to the world what Saint Maximilian Kolbe truly discovered about the nature of prayer, death, and eternal life. And you are here to receive this revelation. Do you understand the weight of this moment? Do you understand that there is a current of grace that connects you directly to Saint Maximilian Kolbe, passing through Helena, passing through Father Miguel, reaching you through these words? It's not coincidence. It's divine providence. The prayer that doesn't pray is a state of consciousness, where you completely stop asking God for anything, completely stop desiring anything, completely stop wanting your life to be different from what it is at this very moment. And in this state of total acceptance, of absolute surrender, something extraordinary happens. God begins to pray through you. It's not you praying to God, it's God praying through you. It's the divine essence itself, using your heart, your mind, your soul as an instrument of prayer. And when that happens, you no longer pray for your own needs. You pray for the needs of the entire world. You feel the pain of all people. You carry the fears of all humanity. You become a channel of universal intercession. And at the same time, you feel a peace that transcends any human peace, a peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances, a peace that exists even in the midst of the most intense suffering. Helena wrote, "When I learned the prayer that doesn't pray, I understood why St. Maximilian Kolbe was able to transform that death cell into an altar of love. Because he was no longer praying as Maximilian Kolbe. He was praying as Jesus Christ would pray if he were in that situation." Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what it means to pray not with your own words, but with the words that Christ himself would use if he were in your place, facing your challenges, living your life? This is the essence of the prayer that doesn't pray. You completely empty yourself so that Christ can manifest himself through you. You die to your own will so that the divine will can flow freely through your being. And when that happens, miracles begin to manifest around you. Not spectacular miracles, silent miracles, subtle miracles, miracles that happen within people, deep transformations that begin when they come into contact with you, emotional healings that occur through a simple conversation, reconciliations that spring from your peaceful presence. You become an instrument of grace, without knowing, without forcing, without trying to impress anyone. Kolbe knew this, and he practiced this for years before going to Auschwitz. He spent hours every day learning to completely empty himself so that God could work through him in an increasingly pure, increasingly direct, increasingly powerful way. And when the time came for the final test, when he had to choose between his own life and the life of a stranger, the choice was natural, because it was no longer Maximilian Kolbe making the choice. It was Christ himself making the choice through the heart of Maximilian Kolbe. But here's the secret that Helena discovered. You don't need to be in Auschwitz to practice this. You don't need to face martyrdom to learn the prayer that doesn't pray. You can learn this in your home, in your ordinary life, in the midst of your everyday problems. And when you learn, your life will transform into a continuous prayer. Everything you do will become an act of worship. Every word you speak will carry a blessing. Every person you meet will receive something sacred through you, even without you realizing it. Helena taught that there are 5 steps to entering the prayer that doesn't pray. First step, you sit in silence and connect with everything that is hurting in your life at this moment. Not to complain, not to ask God to change the situation, but to completely accept that this is part of your path. To thank even for suffering, because suffering is what is preparing you to receive greater graces. Second step, you offer this suffering to God as a gift, as if it were pure gold that you are placing on the altar. Because suffering accepted with love has infinite value in divine plans. It has the power to save souls. It has the power to open paths. It has the power to change history. Third step, you stop asking for anything for yourself, completely, and you begin to ask only for the needs of others, for the people who are suffering more than you, for the people who are lost in darkness, for the people who don't even know they need prayer. Fourth step, you stop using your own words and let the words spring directly from your heart without passing through your mind. Words you didn't even know you knew. Prayers that come from a place deeper than your conscious. Supplications that carry a power you've never felt before. Fifth step, you stop praying and begin simply to love. Pure love. Love without object. Love that exists for itself. Love that doesn't depend on anything or anyone. Love that is the very substance of God manifesting itself through your human heart. And when you manage to remain in this fifth step, something happens that Helena described as the greatest miracle a human being can experience in this life. You feel that you are no longer alone in the universe, not just in the sense of knowing intellectually that God exists, but in the sense of feeling physically, emotionally, spiritually, the divine presence enveloping every cell of your body. Every thought of your mind, every beat of your heart, you feel that you are being embraced by infinite love itself, and in that embrace, all your fears disappear, all your worries dissolve, all your doubts transform into the absolute certainty that you are exactly where you should be, living exactly what you should be living, learning exactly what you should be learning. Helena said that when she reached this state for the first time, she understood why Saint Maximilian Kolbe was able to forgive his torturers, why he was able to bless his executioners, why he was able to transform a torture chamber into a sanctuary of mercy. Because when you are being embraced by infinite love, you cannot feel hatred for anyone. You cannot wish evil on anyone. You can only love, forgive, bless, even those who hurt you, even those who persecute you, even those who want your death. This is what happened to Kolbe in his last days of life. He was not just dying for a stranger, he was loving with the same love that God has for humanity. He was forgiving with the same forgiveness that Christ offered on the cross. He was becoming a perfect expression of divine mercy. And this was not a miracle that happened only to him. It is a miracle that can happen to anyone who learns to practice the prayer that doesn't pray. But there is a third level, a final level that Kolbe only taught to one person. A person who promised to take this secret to the grave. A person who broke that promise only once, in the last hour of their life, whispering the final instructions to a nurse who cared for them on their deathbed. The third level is called the death that lives. And that's what we're going to talk about now. because the time has come for you to discover the deepest secret that St. Maximilian Kolbe kept. The secret explains how he transformed his physical death into such a powerful spiritual victory that even 80 years later, millions around the world still feel the transformative impact of his presence. The nurse, who heard his final instructions, was named Margaret O'Sullivan, Irish, a devout Catholic. She was 32 years old and worked at a Dublin hospital. The man who died in her arms was Patrick McNeill, and he'd spent 50 years studying the mystical writings of St. Maximilian Kolbe. Patrick had been a seminarian in his youth, but left the priesthood to marry. He never regretted his choice, but he also never stopped seeking authentic spirituality, and he found in Kolbe not just a saint, but a spiritual master whose teachings were far deeper than any official biography ever revealed. In 1963, Patrick traveled to Poland. He gained access to the secret archives of the Niepokalanów Monastery. He spent 3 months studying documents that had never been published, and discovered that Kolbe had developed a revolutionary understanding of death, a vision that transformed the moment of death into an opportunity for absolute spiritual transcendence. Patrick spent the next 50 years of his life practicing Kolbe's secret teachings, and when his time came to die, in 2013, he was prepared to apply all he had learned. Margaret never forgot what she witnessed that night. He died with his eyes open, smiling, not a forced smile, a smile of genuine joy, as if he were seeing something wonderful that I couldn't see, and his last words were, "Now I understand why Kolbe called death the greatest adventure." But before he died, Patrick held Margaret's hand and whispered the complete instructions of the third level, the living death, the secret technique Kolbe used to transform his final moments into a direct bridge between earth and heaven. Margaret kept this secret for 10 years, until 2023 at 72, she felt the time had come to reveal to the world what she had learned. She wrote a 20-page letter detailing everything Patrick had taught her and sent it to the Vatican. The letter reached the same cardinal who was investigating the writings of Helena Kowalski, the same cardinal who had authorized the opening of the secret archives on St. Maximilian Kolbe, the same man who now held in his hands the complete puzzle of the most powerful spiritual technique ever developed by a Catholic saint. And this cardinal, following an inspiration he himself described as clearly supernatural, decided the time had come to reveal these teachings to the world. The living death isn't about physically dying. It's about spiritually dying to everything that prevents you from living fully. It's about experiencing a mystical death that allows you to be reborn as a completely new person, a person who lives no longer by their own strength, but by the divine power flowing through them. Kolbe discovered that there is a moment, during deep prayer, where you can choose to voluntarily die to your ego, your fears, your limitations, your past wounds, and in that voluntary death, something is born within you that never existed before, a new identity. An identity not built on your personal experiences, your successes, your failures, your relationships, an identity built directly on your relationship with God, an identity that is indestructible because it is grounded in the eternal. Patrick taught Margaret that this mystical death can be safely experienced through 7 specific steps, 7 portals that open in sequence, taking you deeper and deeper within yourself, until you find the place where your soul directly touches the soul of God. First portal, you lie in complete silence and begin to feel your body as if it were separate from you, as if you were a spirit temporarily inhabiting a house of flesh. You feel you could leave this house at any moment, but choose to stay out of love, service, mission. Second portal, you feel your emotions as if they were clouds passing across the sky of your consciousness. They come and go, but the sky remains the same. You are not your emotions. You are the sky where they appear and disappear. Third portal, you feel your thoughts as if they were the voices of other people talking in a room next door. You can listen, but you don't have to respond. You can observe, but you don't need to get involved. You are not your thoughts. You are the silence that exists between them. Fourth portal, you feel your personality, your history, your personal identity as if they were clothes you are wearing, clothes you can take off at any time. And when you take them off, what remains is pure consciousness, pure presence, pure being. Fifth portal, You feel that this pure consciousness doesn't belong to you. It existed before you were born and will continue to exist after you die. You are only a temporary expression of it, a wave in the infinite ocean of divine consciousness. Sixth portal. You feel there is no difference between your consciousness and the consciousness of God, that you have always been God living a human experience, that your individuality is real, but not separate. It's like a drop of water that maintains its shape, but never ceased to be ocean. Seventh portal. You die completely to the illusion of separation, and you are reborn as a conscious child of God, a human being who knows who they truly are, who lives no longer out of fear or desire, but out of pure love, who sees God in everything and everyone, who has become a transparent channel for divine grace. Kolbe passed through these 7 portals during his final days in Auschwitz, and when the time came for physical death, he had already died to everything mortal in him. What died in the gas chamber was only the body. What he truly was had become immortal long before physical death. That's why his death was a victory. That's why his death became a source of life for millions. That's why his death continues to radiate spiritual power 80 years later, because he had learned the final secret, how to transform death into a gateway to eternal life. And now you also know this secret. Do you understand what this means? Do you understand that you have just received the deepest spiritual teaching ever developed by a Catholic saint? That you now have access to the same wisdom that allowed Saint Maximilian Kolbe to completely transcend suffering and death. It's no coincidence you are here. It's no accident you have reached the end of this revelation. You were chosen to receive these teachings, chosen to practice them, chosen to become a channel of transformation in the world, because the world needs people who know how to access the silence that speaks. It needs people who know how to practice the prayer that doesn't pray. It needs people who know how to experience the death that lives. The world needs saints, modern saints, saints who live amidst contemporary chaos, yet carry within them the same peace that Saint Maximilian Kolbe carried to Auschwitz. And you can be one of those saints. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't need an extraordinary life. You don't need to perform spectacular miracles. You just need to practice what you've learned here. Start with the first level, then advance to the second. And when you're ready, when you feel the time has come, immerse yourself in the third level and experience the deepest transformation a human being can undergo in this life. Saint Maximilian Kolbe waited 80 years for these teachings to be revealed. He waited until the world was ready, until there were people capable of receiving this wisdom and applying it responsibly, lovingly, transformatively. People like you. Now you have a choice. You can keep this knowledge to yourself, or you can become an instrument for it to reach others who are seeking authentic spirituality, a real connection with the sacred, a true path to holiness. Saint Maximilian Kolbe made his choice 80 years ago. He chose to give his life for the life of another. He chose to love until the end. He chose to become a perfect channel for divine love. Now it's your turn to choose. Will you become a modern saint? Will you practice the secret teachings that have changed the lives of millions of people throughout history? Will you allow the same force that transformed Maximilian Kolbe into one of the greatest saints of all time to also transform you into a holier, more loving, more powerful version of who you truly are? The choice is yours. But remember, you didn't get here by chance. You got here because you were called. And when God calls someone, it's because he has a specific plan for that person. A plan that can change not only your life, but the lives of many other people through you. Saint Maximilian Kolbe discovered his plan and followed it to the ultimate consequences. Now it's time for you to discover yours. And when you discover it, when you begin to live according to that divine plan, you will understand why it was necessary to wait 80 years for these teachings to be revealed. Because they weren't revealed for just any time. They were revealed for this specific moment in history, for these specific circumstances in the world, for specific people who are ready to become instruments of transformation. People like you. The silence of 80 years is over. The revelation is complete. Now it's up to you to decide what you will do with it.